Derek Mitchell, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Michael. It's good to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Great to have you, man. And if you would, for those that don't know you, where do you live and what do you do?
Sure. Well, I'm Derek Mitchell. I'm the current leader of the NSA Atlanta chapter. I was born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. Actually, been here my entire life, and currently I work with a company called West Rock in as a senior IT service strategy analyst.
Gotcha. And so just jumping right into it, Derek, are you like seemingly the vast majority of us folks who stutter that you got some pretty tough, challenging memories with regards to your stutter from childhood?
Uh, Unfortunately, yes, I do. I definitely have my fair share of challenges and um, um, and hard times growing up in school, being a person who stutters, and that was from pretty much from um, pre-K all the way up through um, my high school graduation. So have a lot of tough stories here.
And what's if you would maybe share, one or two of the toughest ones that really stick in your mind.
I think probably the toughest time that I've had was probably in the fifth grade, maybe. Yeah, the fifth or sixth grade, maybe, because that was really a turning point with how I dealt with my stutter as a child. So based on what I can remember and based on what I've been told from friends who I grew up with, my stutter kind of started to surface around the second around the second or third grade, and it progressively got worse. Um, so 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 around the time that it started to be noticeable, I was put in speech therapy and worked with a speech therapist. I believe it was once a week, and um, around the time that it started, and a couple years after, few years after, um, one of the things that I could still do um, fluent, fluently was read aloud. So whenever I would get called on to read a few paragraphs in class, at that time that was not something that I was afraid of. That was something that I looked forward to, because that was the one thing that I could still do um, effortlessly and fluently. But one day that just changed, and 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 um and like I said, this was the fifth or sixth grade, maybe. As usual, I was called in front of the class to read um from a textbook, and I'm sitting there and I'm expecting, as usual, to speak fluently with no with no effort at that point. And I'm standing in front of the class, open my um 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 my mouth, and nothing comes out. And so this is the first time that I've ever had that kind of a block reading aloud. And it happened at the worst time, worst situation that it could have is in front of a class full of kids who just jump at the opportunity to make fun of you for for any reason, because as kids that's just what you do. So I'm standing there in front of the class and nothing is coming out, and and after a few seconds, of course, the laughter starts, and the longer I block, the more the louder the laughter progressively gets. And so eventually, with enough time, I get through the paragraphs that I was called in front of the class to read. But that day I did not hear the end of it. I got jokes all day long. And so to have my speech just change all of a sudden in that kind of a scenario, that was pretty traumatic for me at that age. And it's at that time that really and I was never very outgoing as a kid. I was always pretty shy and reserved as a result of having a stutter. But that's when it really got worse, and I really kind of withdrew from people and withdrew into myself and really shut down and just stopped talking. And so from that time on, I really only spoke in school whenever it was absolutely a necessity. If I didn't have um 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 to speak, I wouldn't. So I would just stay put on myself at all costs. And so that moment really started a trend that stayed with me until adulthood, of just being reserved, being to myself, not really wanting to socialize or deal with people, just avoiding speaking, um, 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 situations whenever I could. And that was all types. That was speaking in front of an audience, that was networking events, that was social events, that was happy hours, just any situation um um but there was a excess of people around. I avoided it, and it all started with that moment.
Mm. Yeah, that's it's amazing how many folks I talk to, including several on this podcast, and myself included, somewhere around that fifth, sixth, seventh grade, there's a turning point, at least in the way that we remember, seeing our stutter in our life. And I guess it's possible maybe we noticed some things when we were even younger than that we just don't remember. But I don't know. I mean, for me, yeah, it was the sixth grade, and I had just started liking girls, and I liked a girl, and another boy liked the same girl. And I guess he, recognized that I had a stutter. I don't even remember knowing really that I had a stutter at that point, but he saw it and started making fun of me about it in front of other kids, got some laughs. And from that point on, it was like, well, first of all, there was a moment like, whoa, am I, really that different? Am I as weird as this kid is saying I am? And other people are laughing like you know, I'm a joke, basically. And just, then making it my mission to not give people ammunition to make fun of me, which means not talking much. Because, if I was talking, I was going to have some stuttering, and, and I didn't know how to not do that. The techniques I had learned from the speech therapist, never worked in the real world. So it was, you know, what other choice did you have? I mean, in retrospect, I absolutely could have continued to speak and just stutter and face those people and say, look, it's a stutter. You can laugh if you want, but it's not going to stop because I stutter, And but I didn't know to do that. I had no idea to do that at that point. So I just basically hid. For me, it went on from the sixth grade. And in the eighth grade, I moved from Memphis to Atlanta. So I arrived in Atlanta in the eighth grade. I didn't know a soul at school, and it was just, I wasn't going to put myself out there. So it was just totally a life of hiding. Was that how yours felt as well? Like there was this giant wall up between you and the world, and just totally not being ourselves.
Exactly. That's exactly what it felt like, is that there was just this whole world that I was not a part of, but but that I was just a spectator. And it got so bad to the point that people actually started thinking that that something was clinically wrong with me. I have a cousin who went to high school with me for a couple of years, and he's the polar opposite. He's an athlete, very charismatic, always um always always popular, very social, like the polar opposite um of me. And on one day he told me, look, there people are talking about you. And at this point in time, I thought I was invisible, because that was my goal, was to be in stealth mode, was to be completely under everyone's radar. And I thought I had accomplished that, but apparently not, because it said people are talking about you, like you don't talk at all, and people think something is wrong with you. Like people think that there's something that's diagnosably wrong with you.
Like like you're intellectually disabled or something like that.
Intellectually, emotionally, like like they thought something was different about me, because I just did not speak at all. I compare it to just like being a ghost. I was present in a room, but did my but it didn't touch or impact anything, or so I thought. And so I understand what you're saying with there being that wall up, and you are in this world but not a part of it, and there's something that's just separating you and you can't get through it.
Yeah, like I mean, social prison essentially. And like you said, our goal was, if anything, to deepen that social prison by just disappearing, right? By hoping that nobody even looks at us, much less notices us. And in retrospect, of course, we now know that we weren't dealing with it the most productive way, right? Our fear and shame and embarrassment of having a stutter. But at the time, and it's almost, you never want to say anything's 100% universal, because nothing is, but it's almost universal that folks who stutter, almost all of us have at least gone through a stage of deep shame and embarrassment and avoidance. And with you and I, we had now I like to call it a good enough stutter. Some people call it a bad enough stutter, but we had a good enough stutter where we weren't going to be able to hide it. So if we were talking, people were going to know, right? And yet we still tried to be covert. We still tried to fool the world, right? And for example, I remember my freshman year of high school, having to give a presentation on an invention that, an invention, the level of inventor that you have freshman year of high school, but we had to give a presentation on our invention, and mine was called the handy cooler, sort of a variation of a cooler with a few extra things in there. And I remember going into that speech, and I had just given a speech a month before in my social studies class on Genghis Khan. And from the moment I heard I was going to have to give that speech to the second I got up to give it, I just lived in dread about this moment, just knowing I'm about to totally embarrass myself, because like you, I was in stealth mode, and having to stand up, obviously, and give a presentation, there's nowhere to hide in that situation.
Right.
And so I get up and I say, Genghis Khan was, and I couldn't say born. I couldn't get born out. And in those days, I chose to silent block because I hated the sound of my stuttering. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to silent block until the word comes out right. So I said, Genghis Khan was, and just with a ton of tension on my face, just silent blocked, not able to say born. I couldn't think of another word for born. I don't know. I don't think know another word for born,
Right.
Came into this world, maybe I could have said, but arrived on this planet. It sounds like you're an alien that was dropped off or something. So after like 2 minutes of that, I just sat down. After maybe a 2-minute long block. And I'm sure the kids just having no idea what was going on. I don't remember people laughing, but I don't remember much. I just remember like time sort of stopping and me just, sitting up there unable to get it out. So I sat down, and total shame, and just braced for it to spread around the school, this freak show, as I thought of myself, who got up and gave a 3-word Genghis Khan, 3-word speech. And so a couple months after that is when I had to give the presentation for science class on the invention. So I said, okay, I got to do something different than the Genghis Khan speech. That just didn't work out well at all. And I had no good strategy. So I said, well, I can say the filler phrase, without a problem. I seem to be able to say, So if I get in any problem, I'm just going to say, and sort of pray to God that the word will somehow break free. And so I probably said, maybe 300 times in a 15-minute presentation, this is the, sandwich holder or whatever it was on the handy cooler, right? So just an bizarre number of in a row sometimes. And you think about what we didn't necessarily know that we were making a choice. We were just holding on for dear life, trying to not embarrass ourselves, right? But in retrospect, the choice I was making, because ultimately it was a choice. It wasn't an informed choice, but it was a choice. I was saying, look, I'd rather be the guy saying, 14 times in a row, and people sitting out there thinking, what the hell is going on with this guy? Why would he say, 14 times in a row? Is he, intellectually disabled? Like, what's going on? Does he have Tourette's? What's happening here? I would rather, obviously I was choosing that over just to be the kid who stutters, right? Just to say, this is the sandwich cooler, and this is the blah, 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 but just show the stutter, right? I was doing everything I could to hide it. And so it's interesting the choices we make, right? And you were making a similar choice where it's like people might even think that, Derek doesn't know how to talk, or doesn't have anything to say ever. which of course wasn't true. The truth was is you were a kid with a stutter and you were doing everything you could to hide it. Right. And that obviously was during some pretty formative years. Those are formative years for humans.
Right.
And so, and this is changing gears a little bit, but do you think that those tough experiences, well, first off, it made us go inside of ourselves more, right, than we would have otherwise. I don't know about you, but if I hadn't had the stutter, I know I would have been probably one of the more outgoing people during those years. Probably wouldn't have, John Gomez, the director of the documentary When I Stutter, said on the podcast, one of the earliest episodes, he said, and he's not a person that stutters, but he's a speech therapist and has made a documentary on it, that in his experience, a lot of people that stutter have a beautiful inner life, like a richer inner life in some ways. Obviously we have our challenges internally also, but, historically at least, but that perhaps because we weren't out there as much, the life of the party, I don't know, partying, chasing girl, whatever the case may have been, we were more internal, that perhaps we actually develop in some ways, maybe a richer inner life than we would have. Is that ever something that, have you ever thought about that, or what do you think about it?
I can definitely relate to that because I know I have a very vivid imagination, and I always have, and at some point in time, it occurred to me that that's likely a result of being a person who stutters and kind of withdrawing away from people inside myself. And so therefore everything that I would have done externally, I did internally, and to this day, I still do this. I have full conversations with myself in my head, because as a kid, I had no friends, but I wanted to talk about things. So
That's great, man. And
so pretty much I had conversations with the one person that was there, and that was me. So so I can definitely relate to that, as far as just having a very rich and vivid kind of internal existence, because that's something that I definitely experienced as a kid, and something as an adult is still present.
that's cool. And I hadn't made that link until you said that there, but I did that also. We still had to talk, right? We still had to communicate. We still had stuff to say.
Exactly.
But just we weren't saying it externally, at least not with most people in our life. And so, but we still, thought about those things and still almost like I would imagine myself having the conversation with people, right? Like if I could speak right now, this is what I would say,
Right.
that sort of thing. And that encourages more of a dialogue, almost like a writer, right? Writing a novel where you have to think of what's this character saying? What's this character saying? Almost like we were writing novels with these various subjects in our head, whereas other kids, and I mean, my kids, I've got 4 kids between the ages of 5 and 11, and they're all very outgoing. They don't hold back much, I think, as far as what they're thinking. You hear it to the point where sometimes a parent goes like, time out, we're going to do silent time for a while, But contrasting that with the way that I was, especially in those, like outside of the home. I was a little more outgoing for sure at home with my family as a kid. But outside of the home, I mean, yeah, all those conversations were the only place they could happen for me was internally. And I do, that's a good point. I brought that forward. I still do that. Like when I'm out on a hike, which I do a lot of,
Me too.
I mean, nowadays with technology, a lot of times I'm listening to a podcast or maybe, a book on tape or whatever, but sometimes I'm just walking and I swear I'm not just thinking, I'm actually having a dialogue, like a conversation. And I wonder if that might be a byproduct. It's probably a hard thing to study because it's hard to study what exactly is going on in somebody's mind. But yeah, it's an interesting thing that rich inner life or beautiful inner life, as John called it, and as we have experienced it. So would you say, Derek, that you for sure wouldn't be the person that you are exactly if you hadn't had the stutter? And would you now say, I mean, at least in some ways, that the stutter has sort of made you who you are in some ways?
Oh, for sure. I mean, in most ways, I think I definitely would not be the person who I am now if I didn't have a stutter. It shaped so many aspects of my life, socially, um, mentally, emotionally, um, um, creatively. So as far as my taste and interest in things, I definitely would not be who I am if I didn't have a stutter. I don't know who I would be, but I definitely um, would be the person that I am now, for sure.
I hear you. I hear you. And yeah, we can't run history twice, right? We don't know who we would have been if we didn't have the stutter at all. I can tell you in my case, I don't think I would be a dentist if I hadn't had the stutter. I wanted to never give anybody an opportunity. Well, I figured in the corporate world. So if I went the track that, most people that I knew and went to college with went, which is which is fine, but graduate college and then enter the corporate world and do your best to make something happen. If I hadn't had the stutter, I'm pretty sure I would have gone that route and just, figured I'll, taught my way up the corporate ladder, that sort of thing. But with the stutter, I figured, look, there's a chance that I'm going to come up for a promotion at some point and all other things will be equal, but I've got the stutter and the other guy or gal doesn't. And I wanted to take away the possibility for anybody to discriminate against me because of my stutter. So I figured if I become a dentist, well, then, I can be the boss. I can open the office where I want. I know I can, even though I got the stutter, I know that and by that point, in my case, I had found my confidence. I, still had the good stutter, but I had found my confidence and I wasn't running away from stuttering. And I knew I could talk to people. I knew they have to be a little bit patient, but I knew I could do it. And so I just wanted to keep the control, if you will, in my hands as far as my career, not giving anybody the chance to, choose somebody else over me because of the stutter. And so I literally wouldn't have become a dentist. And once again, we don't know what would have happened if we had gone the other, or if we had not had the stutter. But it worked out well. I ended up starting my practice and growing it to 5 locations. And I think there's a very good chance that I would not have had the professional success I had if I had not gone the dental route, and I wouldn't have done that if I had not had the stutter. So, no doubt.
And also as a dentist, you definitely don't have to worry about anybody giving you a hard time or insulting you or laughing at you, because the last thing you want to do is offend the person who's about to go inside of your mouth with sharp instruments. So that was a problem.
That's true. I am not going to offend this guy over his stuff because, he can take it out on me easily. That's true. I never thought about that exactly, actually. But I really did feel, and now I'm certainly not cured, but I've got a lot more control over it than I did. But I really did feel that my stutter humanized me. In retrospect, especially when I look back at it, my stutter, I feel like in a lot of ways made me connect with people in a way. Like I was clearly human. I had this challenging thing that was obvious, but I was talking anyway, and I was saying what I wanted. And it's almost an opportunity. And I spoke about this with Chris Constantino on an earlier episode, but it's an opportunity to show character. And, not that we want our stutter to be any central thing. It's what we're saying that matters. But whether we like it or not, it does show courage when we go out there and say what we want, despite having a challenging stutter. And I think people, it creates human moments also where we're showing this vulnerability, so to speak, although it's, it doesn't have to be a weakness for sure, but it's a vulnerable moment that we have where we show people our stutter. Right? It's a new person. We know we're going to have a block. We say it anyway. We stutter. I'm a big fan of eye contact. So you have that, full communication, and you can see it on people's eyes when they're, or in people's eyes. If they don't have a really good poker face, you see it in their face, and at first, like, what's going on? Why is he doing that? Right. And then we just keep talking and keep stuttering, and they figure it out pretty quick. Okay. I guess, Mike or Derek's got a stutter. No worries,
Yeah. And, and that's something as I've gotten older that, that I've also, noticed, realized, is that how much, as you said, how much it humanized me in a way, because it created a lot of humility and empathy. And just recently, I took a strengths finder assessment, and I think that my second or third strength was empathy. And so definitely, I would attribute that to my experiences with stuttering and having that high level of empathy, and being able to sense really what someone else is experiencing or feeling, and, and along with that, as I've grown more comfortable with my voice and with how with how I speak, you know, I've been more open to talking about my experiences as a person who stutters, and to realize that showing that measure of vulnerability kind of has made others feel more comfortable. People who don't stutter has made them feel more comfortable with telling me about their own insecurities, their problems, their issues, and kind of breaking down that barrier, that you have when you initially meet a person and not really knowing who they are and their intentions, is it being open and vulnerable about stuttering kind of does a lot to accelerate that barrier coming down and people being more um, open with you, and giving me a more effective way to connect with people. So as I've gotten older, I definitely am seeing the benefits of those experiences and how I interact and connect with people, which is very ironic, because the same thing that put such a distance between me and other people now gives me a more effective way to communicate and connect with people. That's been a big big sense of irony for me.
Yeah, that's so well said. And yeah, I mean, that's so true, right? This thing that we were convinced disconnected us deeply from everybody else, as it turns out, can be a vehicle of connection with people. And, for example, with interviewing dentists to work in my practices, which the first 10 years of having my business was with the really good stutter going. So I did a lot of interviews with that good stutter, and I swear it always surprised me. And this is decreased now that I don't, struggle near as much. I still have good conversations with the doctors when I'm interviewing them, but it feels like a job interview, right? Like it feels a little, job interviews by their very nature are a little bit uncomfortable, right? It's an evaluation, it's employer and possible employee sort of sizing each other up and, trying to impress each other, sort of a thing. It's not the most natural of human interactions necessarily.
Right.
And that's how it feels now. Still fine, but before with the stutter, but saying every word I wanted to say, I had the same conversations then as now. It's just then it was more of a challenge on my end to get the words out. But I swear there was an instant trust built where they trusted me from the first conversation, like to an irrational extent. Like you're not really supposed to trust somebody you just met. That's not that, right. You don't have to distrust them, but trust but verify sort of a thing. And I swear it was just built, and like they felt a rapport with me immediately. And now I feel like it's not like it's bad. It's not bad, but it's normal. It's like I don't have that instant rapport that's built as much, that instant trust. And this is one that I always thought, like, the stutter totally gets in the way of me having rapport with people. And obviously it can, disrupt the back and forth ebb and flow of the conversation. Certainly, I'm not saying that there's no downside at all there, but the connection, the getting people to open up, getting them to believe that we are who we say we are, sort of a thing, right? When you're, and I almost think when somebody's having to struggle through their words, but they're saying it anyway, it makes people think, man, or maybe not even think it, but feel it. He must really mean what he's saying, or he wouldn't be battling through these words like this to, he's really having to work hard to communicate this to me. So he must really believe in what he's saying. And when somebody believes in what they're saying, can make the communication more powerful, obviously, rather than just thinking it's throwaway, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I like your shoes. Oh, great. Thank you. I like your hat. Okay. Have a good one. Yeah. See ya. It's like, did anybody mean what they just said? I don't know. Right.
Yeah. And that's interesting that you just say that, because as I began to really make an effort to connect more with people and to be more social, and to be more socially engaged, I really started to really observe people a lot more, and just really noticed how much people waste words. Just how much people talk just for, just just for the sake of talking, and waste so many words that they don't mean, that they haven't really carefully thought about. They have no intention, but just talk. And so, to your point, I think that um, that people can really pick up on that. Can pick up on when you're just talking just to talk, versus when you actually mean what you say, and when you value the words that come out of your mouth. Um, but it's odd that the thing that you thought was putting up a wall between you and others, just like me, is what really kind of served to um, 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 truly validate um, who we are, um, in the eyes of some people. That are stutter, and how we handle it really validated our character um, to an extent. So so it's odd that that, but that's so counterintuitive to to what so many of us view and feel about our stutter as really as more than a speech impediment, but an impediment um to um um to people, and to building connections. So it's odd that that one thing really helped to build a connection when you thought that it was the one thing that was putting up a barrier.
Yeah. Yeah. It's super interesting. And it's kind of ironic, if you spoke to, like, if we could go back and speak to ourselves, say at 10 years old, I think that 10-year-old, it would take some convincing from us that what we say is true on this.
Yes, it would.
And you need to listen to us, sort of thing. And on that note, I think it'd be so useful uh, for kids who stutter to be put in touch with older mentors who have been there, done that, right? Who can look back on our journey. And, now, I mean, if you know, in like a weird movie scenario, if you put, Mike or Derek back into their 10-year-old body, almost like the movie Big. Remember when he went from a little kid into an adult? Well, let's go the opposite direction, where you put us back into our 10-year-old body. I mean, we totally know how to deal with childhood, and we wouldn't have had all that pain and all that for those years. And so, if there's anybody listening to this, for example, a school speech therapist, an idea I had, because and Derek, am I correct in assuming that when you found support groups, other folks who stutter, that was something that helped you on your journey?
It helped when I was ready to accept it. Initially, when I found out about the NSA and the stuttering community, I was still at a point where I was chasing a cure and the fix. And so the idea of being in a room full of people who stutter, that didn't make any sense. I couldn't wrap my mind around why anybody would want to do that. You know, I don't like how I speak, so I definitely don't want to go to a room full of people who speak the way I do, and 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 have to hear them too. Like, why would I want to do that? But it definitely took some years and getting to a point where I had to accept that my stutter wasn't going anywhere. And you know, I'm pretty stubborn, so I didn't fully accept that my stutter was was a permanent part of my life until I was about um um 30. Like that's when I really said, okay, this isn't going anywhere. Um, so either I just keep trying to just do the best I can with it on my own, or reach out and get some support. And so at that time, I was seeing a speech therapist, and that was the first time I had seen a speech therapist in probably 10 years, maybe longer. And during one of our sessions, she mentioned the NSA, and I remember, oh, okay, somebody told me about that about 8 years ago. Okay, did did not want to go, but realized that that this was the best option, that this was the only support that I was going to get to help me in the way that I needed. Went to that first meeting, the most uncomfortable experience of my entire life, because at that point in time, I had only come across a handful of people who stuttered. So being in a room full of people who stutter and being able to see how I might look when I'm experiencing a block was not comfortable. But it's exactly what I needed, just to make it real, and just to make it like um just to cement that this is who you are. This is the part of who you are. This is the part of your life. This is the part of your biology. This is you. And from then on, I've been involved in the NSA for 8 years now, and it's one of the best decisions that I've made going to that first meeting, because being a part of this community has added more to my life than I could have ever imagined. I mean, now, most of my best friends now are people who stutter. So there would be a lot missing from my life right now had I not made that decision to go to that first meeting and get involved in this community.
That's good stuff, man. Yeah, it's so powerful getting together with others who stutter, and there's obviously I think every country's got their stuttering organizations, and it's just getting in the same room, and over Zoom you got all these impromptu get-togethers, for example, that have started, which are pretty cool, that you see in some of the Facebook groups with getting together. And I don't know, well, would you say a part of that was with meeting others that stutter and realizing, hey, I actually like them just as much as I like my fluent friends, right? Like, people that stutter are totally likable, and it is it's not the end of the world. It's just, Ralph, and yeah, he's got a stutter, but he's a cool guy. That's what matters, it's easier to accept ourselves when you get around others that stutter and that are acceptable with their stutter, and if they're acceptable, why am I not acceptable? That sort of thing.
Well, it wasn't quite that easy. I wish it was, but I think more so it was just the relatability, the fact that these people without me saying a word understood my life experience and understood what challenges I experienced every day. So um that was the first benefit that I saw with the community, is that just being around people who got it, and I didn't have to explain myself. But because my hesitation to get involved was rooted in my own shame around how I spoke, I still, I still had a certain amount of reservation, just because my own shame was still so strong. So it really took me a minute to fully be open to the community and to really give myself to it fully in a meaningful way. But once I did, it's like you said, I can have the same conversations with these people as I do with my fluent friends, because once you got past the stutter, it's like, okay, we have some other things in common. Having a stutter is what brought us here, but that's not what's building our friendships. That's not what's keeping us here. It's the fact that we genuinely like and care about each other, and and have things in common and can talk to each other. So
That's good stuff. Yeah, that's such a powerful thing in so many people's journey, getting together with others that stutter. And I think part of it might be we realize that the way that we dealt with it, the shame, the embarrassment, the avoidance, actually wasn't a weird way to deal with it. That's the way, almost all of us have been through that stage. The way we feel in regards to our stutter is actually sort of the normal default way to feel about it. But you meet some mentors there, right? You come across some people that are like, hey, trust me when I tell you, it doesn't have to be like this forever, right? We don't have to walk around feeling like a loser our whole life just because we happen to get the stutter. And was there a particular moment that you remember in your journey once you started going to support groups, of when you went from like, I don't like this, I don't think I like this, I don't think I like this, to all of a sudden like, this is pretty cool?
um I think it's when I I I think it's when it got past that that um that point of we're just here because we all stutter, and the friendships actually started to develop. And when we get together, um, either in a chapter meeting or just a few of us just hanging out, just getting a drink, just when those real friendships started to develop, that's when I was like, okay, there's something more here than than um than than I initially expected. And so that's when things really started to. That's when I started to show up, not just because I needed to, but because I wanted to, and started and began to actually look forward to those meetings, to actually see people, to see my friends, and not just have an opportunity just to vent about a situation that I had at work, in line at McDonald's, or trying to order dinner at a restaurant. Where it became less about what the community and the chapter could do for me and what I could give back and do for others. So that's when things really started to take a turn, and I developed a real passion for being involved. But I should say that you mentioned mentorship, and that's the other thing that was such a surprise, is because not only did I found not only did I find that I had meant that um that 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 there are people willing to mentor me in the NSA, in the stuttering community, but also people who didn't stutter at work really stepped up as well. Because my boss at my first job after grad school, and this is when I still was having issues with meeting people, with having conversations. He put me in a position of leading projects as a project manager, and that job is mostly um, um, communication. It's phone calls, it's presentations, it's leading meetings, and he was pushing me towards that path when I just wanted to sit in front of a monitor and just analyze um, um, data and just crunch numbers. And I couldn't figure out why he was doing this to me. Well, at that time, that's how I saw it as something being done to me instead of for me. But ended up being, you know, um, a real benefit in really shaping um, my um, my career path. So really, finding mentorship, finding friends and guidance to support me on my journey, both in and outside of the stuttering um, um, community, has been a real blessing. And I've been very fortunate to find that support in both spaces, and really surprising actually, because you know I just kind of being so um, isolated and removed um, um, people for um, so long, got how really encouraging and kind and supportive people could um, 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 be. So that was definitely one of the bigger lessons that um, that I've taken away um, from this journey.
Sort of, stepping out there and realizing, hey, people will be cool, a lot cooler than we thought they would. And I like your example there with your boss, who was sort of, pushing you into that, the management position, and that's, obviously that was a promotion opportunity and a good thing for your career. And most of us would, most people in general would be like, oh, that's really cool. But with the not wanting to be put out there, right, to wanting to, stay on the computer, and have to talk to as few of people as possible, it felt like an imposition. Like he's trying to, like, why is he trying to get me to talk? Is he, you know, that's not nice of him. Why would he be putting me forward? It's our perception on things obviously can have such a huge impact, right? And so that put so when you took that job, when you decided to take that job, um, did you have major reservations? You just sort of stepped into it like, okay, or were you gung ho when you stepped in? And what changes did you notice once you had to, go to work every day and communicate with this person and that person, and there's a lot of communication on you. Did you find that expanded? Well, that pushing out of your comfort zone, that expanded your confidence and your courage as well?
Nope. Um, going to that job, I had not just major reservations. I had all the reservations. I woke up to go to work anxious and a nervous wreck every morning because I just knew that there's going to be more conference calls, more introductions, more meetings, more phone calls, more status updates, like just more of me talking a lot more than I wanted to every day, and it was rough. And eventually, I knew something had to give because I was struggling, and it was having an impact on how effective I was at doing my job. And so, another mentor, um, also also at this job, stepped up, and um, and so this is a person who I had developed a kind of a work friendship with, but what I didn't know is that she was the president of the Toastmasters club at my job. Now, had I known that, there's no way I would have, you know, um, I would have developed a friendship with her in any capacity because I knew what was coming next. That she would start to invite me out to their meetings, and sure enough, that's what happened. And at first, I said no. Every week she would continue to ask, and every week I would say no. Until eventually I got tired of it, and I said, "Oh, look, I will go to one meeting just to shut her up, and that way she'll leave me alone." Went to one meeting, sat in the back corner, like the furthest from the podium that you could sit is where I sat down, and I was and just even being in the back corner, I was a nervous wreck, just knowing that at any moment somebody could ask me to get up and speak about something. And so after the meeting was over, the next day she wanted to get my feedback, and I say it's cool, but I'm not coming back, and you know why. And so she said, okay, that's fine. But that wasn't the end of it. She went to a senior director who I was working on a project with and got him to agree to sponsor me for a year of membership in Toastmasters. And so while it wasn't necessarily a requirement, it was something that was for my professional development. And how can you say no to um, um, a development um, um, program, which is what is um, which is what it, which is essentially what she sold it as. How do you say no to uh, to developing? That would just look bad. So I had to say yes. And my initial plan was to just be there and do as little as possible and just coast through. But luckily, I realized the opportunity, and really committed to it, and started to give speeches, and not soon after noticed the major um difference with how I was doing with my work, and how effective I was, and how much more confidence I brought um to those meetings, and to the conference calls, and with communicating. So that was a real turning point for me with that job, and really every other job after, is really learning those communication and leadership skills during that time of being a Toastmasters.
Nice, nice. That's awesome. And so by now, you were dragged, sort of kicking and screaming into Toastmasters, right? Where you had to say yes. But by doing that, and I would assume you had a first, I think they call it the icebreaker speech there, right? Where you got up and you spoke in front of people. And I assume you probably had some stuttering moments up there in front of people. Was that first speech the toughest one?
It was tough, but it was tough because I made it that way. So so when I commit to something, I go big. And so with that, and so with the icebreaker, what I did is that I knew that normally it was only about 5 or 6 people um, at our um, at our meetings. That was pretty average. Um, so I knew that that even doing that, even giving a speech in front of that size of a crowd, would have been a big step, but I wanted more. So I sent out this email to everyone who I knew at work, and invited them to come and hear my speech. And my speech was about stuttering. And we um we we met in this big conference room with this long table. It could fit about um 20 people at the table. And that room was packed on the day that I gave um my icebreaker. I mean, actually, and a few people were actually were standing. So it was it, I can't describe to you the amount of pressure I felt around doing that. Like, prior to our meeting, I got no work done that entire day because I could not function. I couldn't think. I was just a nervous wreck. But after I gave that speech, I can't. I just the I, just the triumph that I felt was amazing. Just being able to get up there and not only to openly stutter in front of people, but to talk about stuttering while I'm stuttering. So that was a real moment of vulnerability um, for me, and being that open about something that prior I would not talk about. I would not talk about stuttering at all. But that day I got up and spoke about it to to my coworkers, who I would have to, after that, see every single day. So there was a ton of pressure, a ton of anxiety, but afterward, that feeling um of facing and beating my fear was like nothing else.
So would you say that was a big turning moment or turning point in your life when you gave that speech?
that was a game changer, because really from that moment on, I went from had the intention of doing as little as possible in Toastmasters to to um um giving a speech almost every week um for about 5 months. So just having that feeling of accomplishment and facing and beating um my fear was a game changer, and the real motivation to really commit myself to to that goal of really being of fully accepting and embracing how I speak. And so for that year, and that was 2015. And so for that year, that was my goal. And that experience with giving that first speech is what really put me on that path and made me fully um um commit to it.
Nice. And would you say there was an aspect of learning, of experiencing for the first time that it really is okay to stutter, right? We can sit in, whether it's support groups or online or whatever, and say stuttering's okay, stuttering's okay, stuttering's okay. But until you get out there and you face it and you know, practice what I like to call radical honesty. We're just like, here I am, there got to stutter. It is what it is. And this is my story. Um, until we actually experience that, the mind's not going to really believe it. I feel like, the stuttering mind requires proof that it's okay to stutter, because we got it in our head as a kid that it wasn't, that it was fundamentally not okay for us to stutter. And again, we can intellectually say, yeah, no, it's okay to stutter, but to actually go out and do it and to face it and you know, get up in front of the 30 people or whatever it was there and and speak and stutter, and then the sun comes up tomorrow and it's like, hey, I did that and nothing horrible, they didn't put me in jail, I didn't get killed, it's like I didn't have to go to the hospital, it's actually not the end of the world, it's just a stutter. And other people, you know don't really care, and a lot of them, if anything, they're going to be supportive, they're going to be cool about my journey. It's not like those kids in the fifth grade that were laughing at me, right? That's not those fifth graders that, just, that's what kids do. Like you said,
Right.
they make fun of other kids. That's not representative of the entire world. That's like the worst stage of humanity from a making fun of other people's standpoint. So
Right. Yeah. I mean, and you're right, because so summer of 2013, before I started that job, um, is when I saw is when I was seeing these speech therapists who recommended going to an NSA meeting. And during our first session, she told me something that I had never heard before. And she told me that there is nothing wrong with having a stutter. That was the most profound thing I had heard it at that point in my life, because no one had ever said that. And at that point in time, I was 32, and that was the first time anyone had told me that. And when she said it, I couldn't process it, and really I didn't fully process what she told me until after I gave that that first speech. That's when it was clear that, wait, this is okay, because like you said, I now have proof. I have this audience of people, this audience of professionals, educated, smart, experienced, very savvy, who are encouraging and validating me. And so to me, that was, that was the proof I needed that, wait, um, this is okay. This is all right. And from that point on, I began to put myself out there more, not only in Toastmasters, but in social situations as well, with going to networking events, going out more with my friends, just in general, engaging more with people, and saying that, really no one cares about this except me. And and so that's when I was able to, to fully process what she told me a couple years earlier, that there's nothing wrong with having a stutter. And that was the beginning of me becoming who I am right now.
That's great. That reminds me of what I heard someone say who's in a similar position to yourself, managing quite a few people at a successful company. And one of his employees is also, well, they're both people that stutter, the boss and then one of the employees. And one of the employee is a friend of mine. And he said he asked his boss one day, because his boss has a pretty good stutter, and just starts that phone call, calls the meeting when he needs to, does exactly what he needs to do and has blocks, but just moves on and, says what he wants to say. And my friend asked him one day, how do you do that? How do you seem to not care about your stutter? You just say what you want and it doesn't seem to bother you. You're still cracking jokes, all that. And his boss said, well, I guess when I realized that nobody else cares about my stutter, I stopped caring about my stutter.
Right, exactly.
Right. And, that was one of the best, concise way to say that, I've ever seen. And exactly what you just said. And that was my experience too, with that eye contact training when I was 18 at Florida State. They brought me around, made me look people in the eye when I stuttered and ask them questions. So just get used to, walk up to that person, ask them where the bathroom is. Walk up to that person, ask them where the Starbucks is, whatever the case may be, and do it with eye contact. And I did a few sessions of that, and I was like, dude, people don't give a shit that they really don't, and as it turns out, people are far more interested in their own problems than they are our problems, right?
Yes.
And to the extent that they do care about our stutter, well, it's usually on the positive side. They're supportive. They're rooting for us. They, if anything, like us more because we, for the reasons we talked about earlier, are showing, courage and confidence and all that kind of stuff by speaking up. So that's good stuff, man. So we're coming to the end of the chat here. Derek, were there any subjects or any thoughts, anything that we didn't touch on that you want to share before we wrap it up?
No, I think we covered a lot. I think we covered a lot. Covered all the highlights and all the pivotal moments of my life as a person who stutters. So yeah.
Good stuff, man. Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed the chat, and let's talk again sometime soon, my friend.
For sure. And again, thanks for the invite.
And thanks for joining us. I know that to the people will get a lot out of this. And as you know, from being in the stuttering community, there's still a lot of people that are, still very deeply mired in shame and embarrassment and feelings of inferiority. I think is sort of what it is at its core, feeling like so long as we're stuttering, we're basically inferior. We're not equal to other people.
Right.
And that's process of realizing that that's not true, right? It's just a stutter. It's not defining us as less than other people. You know, everybody's got their stuff. Everybody's got their challenges. Ours is a stutter, but it doesn't have to crush our life with an iron fist. We can absolutely be ourselves and live a very fulfilling life. So,
um, and really, Michael, that's why I stay involved, is because that, I want to see people experience the kind of freedom that I experience now. And for me, that's really what it is. It's that freedom from shame and freedom from self-doubt, and the freedom to be able to just be me, express myself how I want to, um, and to be okay with it. And so that's why I stay involved, is to really help people in any way I can, to experience what I experience now.
likewise, man, that's what drives me too. That knowing that it doesn't have to be like that, right? We don't have to be miserable. That there's a great quality of life out there for us, stuttering or not stuttering, and you know, uh, helping people advance on their own journey, and find their confidence and ability to be themselves. And because as far as I know, we only get one life here on earth, right? And I've met people in their 70s and 80s who never got to that point, who have been isolated and just feel like stuttering's ruined their whole life. And that's obviously that's sad. But it's also a cautionary tale, for anybody watching. I mean, it doesn't have to be like that. We can, go to that Toastmasters and speak up, and we can go around and say what we want. And there's a better life there for us, irrespective of whether we stutter or not, whether we change our stutter one bit or not. It's not about the stutter. It's about us being ourselves and facing those fears. So,
Exactly.
but good stuff, Derek. I thoroughly enjoyed it, man. Have a good day, my friend. Thanks for joining us.
I enjoyed it as well. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.